Dive into the world of Hindu mythology and philosophy with us today, exploring the fascinating story of Murugan, sometimes called Skanda.
Right.
We're looking at excerpts from this document called Muruga, Let Your Glory Be Extolled. And wow, it's really not your typical text. This document connects this ancient wisdom, right, to modern discoveries in a way that really gets you thinking.
Yeah, it's super interesting how it brings together these insights from Hindu scriptures with scientific concepts and even some personal reflections from the author, It's like they're trying to weave all these different perspectives on the universe together
Yeah.
into one coherent.
It's like a tapestry almost.
Yeah, exactly.
And they use Murugan's story as this framework to explore these big, kind of heady ideas. Like, for example, one thing that really struck me, what does it actually mean when we say that Murugan's 6 faces represent different aspects of reality?
Well, it all comes down to this really important concept called Ananta Samarasa,
Okay.
which basically means six-edged harmony.
I see.
So each of his faces, right, embodies a different part of consciousness, a different facet of existence. And when you bring them all together, they form this complete picture.
So instead of looking at these different parts of reality as being separate or even like opposing forces, Murugan represents holding all of them in perfect balance.
Exactly.
I can see how that's such a powerful metaphor for, well, for a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really speaks to this bigger Hindu principle of interconnectedness, this idea that things that seem like opposites, like creation and destruction, light and dark, they're not actually separate, but two sides of the same coin.
It makes you think about all the ways we tend to categorize things, right? Like, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. What if we started to look at the world through this lens of 6-edged harmony?
It's a really powerful shift in perspective. And, the document even suggests that these ancient yogic practices were tapping into these, subtle energies and connections that science is only just now beginning to understand.
Oh, okay. Like what? Give me an example.
Well, they talk about this idea of jivateyas, bioluminescence.
Okay.
And they seem to be suggesting that this ancient concept might be connected to what we now know about biophotons.
Biophotons, remind me.
These ultra-weak photons that our brains actually emit light.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me that we have light inside us?
It seems that way.
And ancient yogis were aware of this.
It's a fascinating idea.
It really is. What are the implications of that?
Well, the document seems to be suggesting that these ancient practices were engaging with the human body and consciousness on a level that we are only just starting to understand.
Wow. It really makes you wonder what other mysteries, what other depths are hidden just waiting for us to rediscover them as we keep, exploring these ancient practices and their connections to modern science.
Totally. And it goes even further than that.
Oh.
It also looks at how the myths about Murugan, particularly his battles, can be seen as metaphors for our own journeys of self-discovery.
So, like, his battle with the demon Surapadman.
Right.
What's the deeper meaning there?
On the surface, it's your classic good versus evil story. But the text digs a little deeper and suggests that Surapadman might actually represent something a lot more intriguing, our own shadow self.
Oh, shadow self.
Those negative aspects of ourselves that we try to bury deep down.
Okay.
The parts we don't want to admit are there.
So it's not about destroying these parts of ourselves then, but more about understanding them, accepting them even.
Exactly. The document actually uses Surapadman's eventual transformation as a symbol of this integration.
Interesting.
It's about recognizing that even our darkest aspects, those shadow selves, are part of what makes us whole. It's not about erasing them, but finding a way to accept them.
That's a pretty powerful idea. Not denying our shadow selves, but really understanding the role they play in our own growth.
Right. And, it all circles back to Ananta Samarasa, that 6-edged harmony we were talking about before. True balance isn't about getting rid of certain aspects, but figuring out how to integrate all of them.
I like that. It gives me a lot to think about in terms of, my own personal growth. It's like this document is saying that really true self-acceptance means embracing all parts of ourselves.
Exactly.
Even the messy bits.
Especially the messy bits. It's through that integration, that willingness to look at the full spectrum of our being, that we can actually move closer to a state of, wholeness.
Yeah.
Balance,
Yeah.
harmony.
I like that. This whole idea of embracing our shadow selves. That reminds me of something else the document talks about, this whole concept of the human body as a temple.
Right.
What's the significance of that metaphor?
Well, it's about recognizing that there's something sacred inside each of us. Just like a temple is a house for, like divine energy, our body is too.
Okay.
It's a place where the divine can show itself.
So we're not just like physical beings, we're
The
also
vessels.
we're vessels for something bigger.
Exactly. The text uses the word sidambaram, which often refers to a physical temple, but it can also describe the inner space of the heart.
Hmm.
It's like saying the heart is like the most sacred place, the sanctum sanctorum, within our own personal temple.
I like that imagery a lot. And it actually connects back to what we were just talking about, too.
Yeah.
This whole idea of finding a balance between these seemingly opposing forces. It's not just about, like, outer harmony, right? But also cultivating that inner balance, too, within ourselves.
Exactly. And one way the document looks at this idea of inner balance is through this concept of avyavastamana, which is often translated as entropy.
Entropy.
Yeah.
Like in physics.
Exactly.
I remember that from school, but I mostly just think of it as, like, disorder and chaos, you know?
Right.
How does that fit in with, like, divine harmony?
That's what I love about this document. It takes these ideas that seem totally different and reveals these amazing connections. So, yeah, like you said, in the traditional sense, entropy is all about systems moving towards disorder.
Right.
But this document connects it to ancient Hindu cosmology, specifically the concept of creation itself.
Okay, so this concept of entropy directly ties into the Hindu view of creation.
It does.
How so?
Okay, so picture this. You have this primordial state of perfect unity, perfect balance.
Okay.
It's often described as sunya kaivalyam, like a vacuum singularity.
Okay.
And from this state of pure unity, duality emerges, right?
Okay.
And with it, you get light and dark, male and female, creation and destruction, all those pairs of opposites we see everywhere in the universe.
So are you saying that entropy isn't like a bad thing in itself? It's just a natural result of creation.
That's one way to think about it. And what's really interesting is how the document then connects this to this yogic practices.
Okay.
Specifically, the idea that yogis are trying to like control and direct their internal energy, often called Kundalini Shakti,
Right.
in a way that brings these opposing forces within themselves into balance.
So it's like bringing order to the internal chaos,
Yeah.
using these ancient practices to find that equilibrium within.
Exactly. And this idea of internal balance through yogic practice, it's actually mirrored in the myths about Murugan too.
Oh, okay.
Think about his battles with all those different demons.
Right.
The document suggests that these demons could represent those chaotic entropic forces, both inside us and in the world around us.
Oh, okay. So when Murugan wins over these demons, it's not just like good conquering evil, but it's like a symbolic representation of achieving that inner balance.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that these seemingly opposing forces, the devas and the asuras, they're not meant to be destroyed. It's about bringing them into a state of dynamic equilibrium.
And that's where that concept of antansa marasa, that six-edged harmony, comes back in.
Right.
It's about recognizing that these forces are all interconnected, and it's about finding a way to like integrate them all.
Yes, and this isn't just some abstract philosophy.
Yeah.
The document suggests we can actually experience this divine synergy, this harmonious balance within ourselves.
Okay, but how? What can we actually do to achieve that?
The document stresses the importance of personal exploration.
Okay.
It talks about a whole bunch of different practices. Yoga, meditation, contemplation, studying sacred texts. These are all potential paths to a deeper understanding. It's not about finding one right answer, but figuring out what clicks with you, what helps you connect with that inner harmony.
So it's about finding the practices that let us tack into that sidambaram, that sacred space within.
Exactly. And in this journey of exploration, it's something the author went through himself. He talks about how he started as a total skeptic.
Really?
Yeah. He even dismissed spirituality as superstition at first.
I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. So many people start from a place of like, okay, show me the proof.
Exactly. And it's his journey from that place of skepticism to a more holistic understanding of the universe that I find so compelling.
Yeah.
He realized that, while a scientific approach is super important, it's not the only way to arrive at the truth. There are other ways of knowing, other ways of experiencing the universe.
He even quotes Albert Einstein.
He does.
And, Einstein himself recognized that a purely scientific worldview has its limits.
Exactly. He talks about how Einstein believed that we need a conception of the world in which scientific discoveries can be in perfect harmony with spiritual aims and religious beliefs. This document feels like an attempt to bridge that gap,
Hmm.
to show how science and spirituality can work together.
Instead of being at odds,
Exactly.
it's about having this more holistic perspective,
Yeah,
recognizing that there are all these different paths that can lead to the same ultimate truth.
absolutely. And, one way the document illustrates this interconnectedness is through this idea of triadic principles.
Triadic principles.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that?
It's this really interesting idea that a lot of cultures, a lot of religions, they recognize these three fundamental principles that govern reality.
Mm.
And these principles might have different names, different attributes, depending on the tradition, but they all point to this similar underlying truth.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So in Hinduism, you have the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva,
Right.
representing creation, preservation, and destruction.
Right.
In Christianity, you have the Holy Trinity,
Mhm.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And in Taoism, you have the concept of yin-yang and the Tao.
Wow, yeah, it's like this universal archetype, a pattern that repeats itself in these different cultures, these different belief systems.
Exactly. And the document suggests that this triadic structure is reflected in Murugan himself.
Oh, wow. So Murugan, like those other trinities, he embodies this like dynamic interplay of these cosmic forces.
Exactly. His 6 faces, they can actually be grouped into 2 sets of triads,
Oh, okay.
each one representing those fundamental principles of creation, preservation, and transformation. Even the stories about how Murugan was born, his battles with the demons, it can all be seen as this, metaphor for this triadic process.
It makes you realize that these ancient myths and these symbols, they have so much depth to them when you really take the time to understand them.
I know. It's incredible. And the document really emphasizes that this shouldn't just be some theoretical understanding.
Yeah.
It's about embodying these principles, about
Yeah.
taking that divine synergy and actually living it out in our lives.
So it's not enough to just think about these ideas. It's about like putting them into action.
Exactly. It's about merging your head and your heart,
Yeah.
combining knowledge with actual experience. And the best part is, the document gives us a bunch of resources to help us along the way.
Like what? Does it point to any specific texts or practices that are especially helpful? The document seems to be drawing from a wide range of sources, both within and outside of Hindu tradition. What were some of the most compelling connections you found?
One that really stood out to me was the reference to the Tirumantiram.
Okay.
It's a collection of mystical poems by the Tamil saint Tirumular.
Okay.
And the document, it draws these parallels between Tirumular's descriptions of yogi practices and the whole concept of jiva tegas.
Mm-hmm.
That idea of subtle energies and bioluminescence within the body.
Right.
Right.
It's like these ancient practices were tuning into something that science is only now starting to grasp.
It really makes you wonder, what other secrets are hidden within these ancient texts and traditions, right?
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of hidden depths, the document also quotes from the Kanda Anubhuti.
Okay.
It's a devotional poem by another Tamil saint, Arunacharanathar.
Okay.
And this poem is just overflowing with praise for Murugan, and the author uses it to highlight the power of devotion as a way to connect with the divine.
So it's not just about the intellectual understanding then,
Mhm.
but also about cultivating that heartfelt connection through practices like devotion prayer.
Exactly. And this idea of connecting with the divine that's within us, it's echoed in that theme of Sidambaram, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
inner space of the heart, that sacred temple.
Yeah, recognizing that the divine isn't something separate from us, but rather this potential that's already present within each of us. Precisely.
Yeah.
And, this whole idea of inner divinity, it connects with another fascinating concept that the document explores. Sanat Kumaran,
Okay, remind me, Sanat Kumaran.
the ever-youthful aspect of Murugan.
Right. Okay. So not literally staying young forever, but more about cultivating this state of inner renewal, inner vitality.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that source of energy and consciousness that goes beyond the limits of time and space. And you know what? The document suggests that we all have the ability to access this state of Sanat Kumaran within ourselves.
Wow. That's a powerful thought that, even though we age physically, there's this potential for a kind of agelessness inside, this constant process of renewal, of growth.
Yes, and it all comes back around to divine synergy.
Right.
Just like Murugan embodies this harmonious balance of opposing forces, we can cultivate that same balance within ourselves and in everything we do, how we interact with the world around us.
So it's about taking all of this, not just understanding it intellectually, but really embodying it, letting it actually guide our actions, shape how we experience the world.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is this divine synergy. It's available to everyone.
That's a nice thought.
The document makes it clear. There isn't just one right path, no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what works for you, what helps you cultivate that inner harmony.
So for our listener who's been on this journey with us, this deep dive into Murugan and divine synergy, what would you say, like, where do they go from here? What's something they can carry with them?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. The real journey, it doesn't begin with understanding Murugan. It begins with understanding ourselves. This document, with all its mythology, philosophy, and even scientific insights, it gives us a map, sure. But the real treasure, it's inside each of us. So explore the practices that speak to you. Delve into those texts that spark your curiosity. But above all, listen to that inner voice, that wisdom within your own heart. That's where the true magic of divine synergy unfolds.
Beautifully said. It's about embracing that journey of self-discovery, uncovering that spark of the divine within each of us. And who knows what incredible things we might discover along the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.